G'day, Ed. How you doing, mate?
Living the dream, Robbie. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm really well, man. A lot's been going on in the world overnight, and I'm excited to be doing today's show with you, mate. What's happening?
Almost too much. It's hard to keep up, but we're going to do our best.
I like to try and look at the headlines of what's going on and pick the most relevant headline where I can add the most value. And I know that I always find myself in that military realm because I've just got that's where I grew up, right? I spent 10 years of my life doing that and working through that. But it's always been an interest of mine. Ever since I was a little kid, I was interested in that stuff. And even after I left the military, I was still interested in all of those things. So I was lucky to live my passion and to live my dream, if you like, in that sense. So I'm looking forward to bringing some hypersonic knowledge to the audience today because that's a really, really big thing that's not being reported in mainstream media. It's certainly been reported, but no one's really talking about why. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here at The Unspoken Truth, welcome. It's great to have you here. Ed and I talk about, as I mentioned, things in the mainstream media. We like to pull back the curtain and talk about exactly what's going on, what's the narrative that's actually driving that, and what does it mean to you. Remember that a lot of this doom and gloom, this is maybe your daily dose of doom and gloom, can be really negative and really bad. So don't be pulled too far down that rabbit hole. Make sure you just got one eye and one ear on what's happening. Check in with Ed and I here on a daily basis and don't be pulled into all of that negativity. If this is, as I mentioned, your first time here, we're over on Spotify, we're on Telegram, we're also on Twitter, and we've got a backup channel where we upload the content every day onto Rumble. If you're unable to tune in to the live show, you can meet us over on Spotify. As soon as we finish recording here, I pull down the episode and I upload it into Spotify. So you can get the video version there, and you can also get the audio version on the go as well. So today, Ed and I are going to be covering a couple of stories. We're going to be talking about the deep state on full display. Wow, I thought the swamp was going to be drained. And, you know, the swamp here in Australia, it got deeper and deeper as the Albanese government came to power here because Labor are known for bigger and more government, which is actually what they've been doing, and spending more of our money, making it worse and harder for everybody. And it seems like the Democrats in America are doing exactly the same thing there. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. And as I mentioned at the top of the show there, I'm going to be talking about the Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missiles that have been intercepted in Ukraine last night, my time, that is, because that is a really, really big thing in modern warfare. And in some ways, it almost changes the face of what's going on with China and the Chinese hypersonic threat against American aircraft carriers. So I'm going to try and join the dots there for everybody and speculate a little bit there. I don't like to speculate, but I'll give you some facts, and I will speculate because I think it's a very, very interesting topic and one that kind of keeps the United States as the world's most dominant military, no matter what enemy they're facing. And in my mind, that's only a good thing, because the last 100 years that we've lived on this earth, or the last 100 years of human history rather, have been dominated by US hegemony. How do you say that word? Hegemony?
Yeah.
And we can say that, yeah, there we go. And we can say that the reason that we live in such safety and security is because of that, but equally there's a downside to that as well that you could argue the other side. But part of the reason globalization exists as it is because of the US Navy and free passage that we all have. So looking forward to joining a few dots there. Ed, have you got any opening comments or opening remarks for us, mate?
Well, I'm going to have some serious questions for you about those Kinzhal missiles because what the hell, you know? And so I'll wait for your report. I don't want to take any thunder out of your storm. So yeah, looking forward to it. Make sure you hit the like button, my friends out there. If you're watching, please hit the like button and give us a couple comments if you don't mind.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it. If you're joining us here on the show today, we'll have a look. Good day, Mark. It's good to see you here, mate. Thanks for joining us again today. I'll be over on Telegram later today, and I've uploaded a series of things that have been going on. There's a whole lot of Russian war crimes that are happening, which seems like on a daily basis. I don't know when these videos are coming out. I can't tell. There's no way to tell. You know, if you right-click and look at the metadata on the actual videos themselves, even that can be manipulated, so it's hard to tell. But I'm seeing Russian white phosphorus attacks, particularly in the east of Bakhmut, in that part of Ukraine, rather, in Bakhmut, in the eastern part of Ukraine. And they're using white phosphorus artillery. If you don't know what that is, they fire it, and it looks like fireworks dropping from the sky. And white phosphorus burns so hot that it can actually burn through and melt concrete. And when you look at the laws of armed conflict and the Geneva Convention, the only time you're supposed to use white phosphorus is when you're using it to mark something. So aircraft have rocket systems on them, so a close air support aircraft, a helicopter or an A-10 or an F-16 might have a rocket pod on it, and they fire a Willie Pete rocket, and that will kind of burns white hot, and you can't put that fire out, right? And that's how they mark the target, and that's how they call in a strike. And you're allowed to use it for that. That's where it is. But when they start using it as an area weapon, which is what they're doing in Bakhmut, that's actually against the Geneva Convention, against the laws of armed conflict. So on a daily basis, we see the Russians breaking the rules of war, if there could be such a ridiculous thing. That's the most stupid statement you could ever possibly come out of your mouth. But there are rules that govern the way conflicts work. You can't use chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, and you're not supposed to use white phosphorus on troops in the open either, but the Russians are continuing to do that. So that's something that's happened. The unspoken truth is that the media is completely silent, and in some ways their silence, in my view, I don't know, what do you think, Ed, that makes them complicit in actually what's going on?
Perfect word of the day, complicit. Yep,
all right, why don't you take it away and show us, talk about the deep state, man. They're on full display for us. Like, that's when you said that, hey, what are you talking about today? You said deep state on full display, and I'm like, yeah, man, that's some really bad stuff been going on the last couple of days, huh?
Yeah, well, listen, so ever since last night, I've been working on this report, nonstop. And at the end, I had a really long, it's like a 30-minute. So I took mercy on you guys. So my presentation is only about 4 minutes long. I want to leave room for Rob and I to chime in. But I do have a little presentation to kind of set the stage for the conversation. So,
all right, let's do it.
Yeah, video. Okay, so the Durham report was finally released last night, and it confirmed what we basically already knew. But let's take a look at the news.
Romance for lovers only.
Okay, so let's start by looking at the actual news.
The Durham report was released today. Now, and according to the Gateway Pundit, Special Counsel John Durham released his final report, concluding that the FBI had no verified intel, none, when it opened its Crossfire Hurricane investigation into Trump back in 2016. It had nothing, no verified intelligence. Now, Jake Tapper, of all people, just said moments ago that it does exonerate Donald Trump. Jake Tapper on CNN.
Okay.
And says that this is devastating to the FBI.
But I'm going to warn you in advance, because this is breaking news, happened within the last hour. And already most headlines are saying Trump era special counsel final report criticizes FBI's Russia probe. So you can already see how they're trying to spin this before we even read it, that this special counsel that was hired under the Trump administration to look into the investigation of how the FBI looked into Russiagate, because it was appointed by Trump, what they're telling you in this headline is that it is automatically flawed.
There will be no arrests, according to the report. The American people were lied to for years that the intel community had been working feverishly to, basically attempt their coup on President Trump. We saw that, of course, a lot in the Twitter files. We saw that with the social media reports that, of course, how they were colluding with social media companies to keep the Hunter Biden laptop story quiet, but also pushing the story about Trump and Russia. They all knew it was a lie, according to this report. They all knew. They had no evidence at all and launched this report. What its agents were finding about the Steele memos that they ordered, no more memos were to be written.
Okay, so to kind of give you a taste, to remind everyone of what we lived through many years, let's take a look at a few clips from the past.
There's one reporter he doesn't seem to have a problem with, tweeting, "Thank you, Eli Lake," after an otherwise critical Bloomberg journalist expressed dismay at the classified information being leaked. Is this a big deal?
It's a very big deal. He was taken out by a campaign of leaks that had to have come from the intelligence community. And in this respect, Flynn is the appetizer, Donald Trump is the entree.
Well, a brand new report by the Washington Post details the key timeline of how former British spy Christopher Steele, who wrote the now infamous Trump dossier, became a flashpoint in the Russia investigation. The report says, quote, in the fall of 2016, a little more than a month before Donald Trump was elected president, Christopher Steele had the undivided attention of the FBI. He had grown so worried about what he had learned from his Russia network about the Kremlin's plans that he told colleagues it was like, quote, sitting on a nuclear weapon.
And so, no, the information, I personally believe information is very credible. And I think Steele found himself, he left the British spy agency, went into business by himself, and then he gets hired by Fusion GPS, and he is alarmed, and I think he's a patriot, not an American patriot, a British patriot, but owes...
Well, I mean, saying the dossier is fake news doesn't make it fake news. It's just an assertion. My name is Luke Harding. I'm a journalist and a writer, and my new book is called Collusion, and it's about Donald Trump and Russia. According to people I've talked to who are kind of close to him, believes that the dossier is not flawless. One or two things may be wrong. He acknowledges that it's raw intelligence, but broadly he thinks it's right. And he says it's between 70 and 90% correct. That's his.
Now, the Trump-Russia story now exists in 3 different realities. That was House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes on O'Reilly a few minutes ago. He's saying he has seen strong evidence that President Trump was spied upon by the Obama administration, but none that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government. Meanwhile, Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin says he has seen, quote, damning evidence of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, but he says journalists will likely publish it in the near future. The rest of us are stuck in a third reality with no proof for either claim. Perhaps Congressman Pocan can change that. He is on the set tonight. Congressman,
take a look at all of this, and then we can move on. And that's what the public's really asking for.
But you know what's really going on, which is the NSA, the National Security Agency, has all the data on everything. They've tapped into the trunk lines, every email communication in the United States, every phone call, maybe some of our thoughts are being recorded and stored by the NSA. So they know exactly the degree to which the Russians interfered or didn't, the degree to which the president was spied upon during the campaign or not. Why doesn't the Intel Committee in the House and the Senate say, produce documents now? Now.
Yeah, well,
and the president should say that too.
And it would have worked perfectly that way had, especially on the House side, the head of the Intel Committee not kind of stumbled through this process. And the fact, and let's have that independent commission come in.
Let's be honest. I mean, look, I've had Schiff on this show, Congressman Schiff of Burbank, who's on the Intel Committee, and I asked a couple pretty normal questions. I thought, like, where's the evidence, for example? And he called me an agent of the Kremlin.
Hey, stop putting out deep state narratives, whatever you... Imagine being that dickhead on stage saying that it's 90% true. What a dickhead. How could you ever possibly know any of that information? It's impossible. You're just muted there.
Yeah. You know, at least you don't have this problem in Australia, right, Rob? So
we have different problems here in Australia, man.
You know, so imagine you're the president of the United States, and your own CIA, your own FBI, your own DOJ, they're out to get you, man. That I mean, talk about being lost at sea. I mean, who do you? I mean, Trump wanted to drain the swamp. Well, the entire swamp is full of monsters that are going to attack you the moment you show up. Look, this is in my opinion, this is going to go down as the most disgraceful event in American history. And now the deep state has been there forever. But what Trump did is he kind of like brought them to the surface. He kind of like made them reveal themselves. He kind of, because the things they had to do were so blatant and so obvious. And like you and I were talking about before we hit the record button, the truth always eventually comes out. Now, it might not be right away. It might take a while, but eventually the truth always comes out. At least if you're in some kind of a freedom-loving society, eventually someone finds the truth. But okay, I always get these images, right? So this image I have regarding this is it's kind of like, have you ever seen those car chases in LA where they're in the helicopter and they're recording this high speed chase, and this guy is racing through. Does this guy really think he's going to get away? These guys always get caught.
Yeah, the road spikes come out, they'll have a crash, or the cops will just cut them off and catch them. Yeah, you're going to get caught. You're 100% right. I want to, before I kind of add my comments there to it, Ed, I want to say, just have a look in the show notes, folks. After I finish the recording here, I'm going to add the Redacted channel in there. Make sure you head over to Clayton and Natalie Morris's channel over there. It's called Redacted. Check that out because it's really good. They do a really good job of staying ahead of the headlines, and no one, there's no point in us trying to redo what they're already doing. They do a great job there. Yesterday, when I'd finished all the editing and I went out for my morning workout, I put my headphones in and I just looked at YouTube quickly, and that report had just come out. And I was listening to a Fox report where the journalist was kind of going through it on the air. And it's like, we knew this was all fake. The whole thing was fake. The thing that I want to highlight there is that in hindsight, when we look back at these things, they're stupid and laughable, right? But in real time, when these things are unfolding in front of you, you can't help but being drawn into the narrative by going, well, hey, what if that is true? Like, far out, man. That's like really serious. If that is true and that's what's going on, and you can't help but being drawn into it. And I want to pull back the curtain and show people the unspoken truth of how the deep state control you. And when I say it, you'll go, oh, yeah, of course. How else would they do it? But what they're doing is they're creating a narrative, and they're perpetuating a narrative that makes you feel scared. Because if you feel scared, then they're able to control you. And if you listen to the word of some of the things that they're saying in those reports, it's like as bad as a nuclear weapon. So what is the worst possible thing in humanity? Nuclear war. Yeah, well, maybe you could argue there's probably some other things, but that would be in the top 3 for sure. And they're saying that, this is like a nuclear bomb about to go off. And the language that they use and the verbiage that they use to describe these things is designed to polarize you into fear. And then when you're scared, this virus is going to kill millions and millions of people. And you're like, well, there's plenty of viruses that have killed millions of people, and I live in Australia, in Sydney, and I've never seen any of them. What are you talking about? But everybody rolls up their sleeve and goes, please give me an experiment. You can experiment on me. And when somebody does that, they're doing that out of compliance. They're so scared. They're so unbelievably scared that they'll comply with anything an authority figure will tell them to do. And that's what the deep state are trying to get you to do. They're trying to get you to comply with their narrative, to control you. And everything there is designed around power. And, it really only kind of hinges on a handful of people in the scheme of things, really just Hillary Clinton getting that Steele dossier going. And from there, the whole thing, it's like this war. Vladimir Putin went across the border and started the war thinking that he'd roll up Kyiv in just a couple of days. Hillary Clinton probably put that out there thinking, I'll roll up Donald Trump pretty quickly in a couple of weeks when the world really sees him for what he is, and creating some fake narrative that's out there. But you just can't control the circumstances and the way people react. And to your point, Ed, if somebody is not lying and it's true, the truth always comes out, man. It always comes out.
Yeah, but in the meantime, while we're waiting for the truth to come out, it can cause an awful lot of damage.
Very damaging, isn't it?
I mean, the net effect of all that it put our country through for years. First of all, it increased the polarization in our country an immeasurable amount. It really made people so much more tribal. So you had that effect, but also it slowed down, if not stopped in its tracks, a lot of Trump's agendas, the things he wanted to get done. So that's the ultimate form of takeover, of a coup. They effectively pulled off a coup because he wasn't able to do all the things that he wanted to do in his presidency. I think that the deep state, they pride themselves on not being public. Okay, they largely want to be unnoticed. Okay, they don't want you to know. They'll just quietly go about controlling you. But I think they were forced to do something bold in order. If we're going to take this guy down, because I think the deep state saw Trump as an existential threat. Because he was a completely different kind of animal. He's not your traditional politician. there's no filter between his brain and his mouth. Okay, so now in a lot of ways, that's not so good because there are many times when I winced. Oh, come on. But at least you knew that he was saying what he believed, and right away that made him a different animal as a politician. Because like him or lump him, you knew what was on his mind. So
well, that's the reality is that right there is the unspoken truth. When a politician comes out and makes you wince, that is because he's just speaking his truth and he's living his truth. He has no reason to lie about anything. And when you think about all of the discourse that was created as a result of all of this deep state and Steele dossier garbage that's out there, the people that it's a very simple equation, right? You see it on every Netflix crime doco that's ever existed. Follow the money, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if you don't follow the money and you can't follow the money for whatever reason, you just got to look at who stands to gain the most from that. So the discourse that they create, trying to get rid of Donald Trump, who stood to gain the most from that? Well, Hillary Clinton. Oh, I didn't do anything. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. But it's now been proven that 100% of it was her. Like, what? And what's the consequence? She doesn't even have to come out publicly and say, sorry. I saw something yesterday about Hillary Clinton. Maybe you can tell me if this is true or not. I don't know, but so I'd been listening to this thing on YouTube. It only went for 15 minutes, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's all fake. It's all bullshit, right? And, keep walking along, and I got to the end. I got to the turnaround point of my workout where I sit down on this. I usually sit down there for about 10 minutes and just enjoy the view, right? I take my headphones out and look. But I was just scrolling through my Twitter just for a second, right? And I looked, and there's a picture of Hillary Clinton at like a public event. And it looks like a recent picture of her. And it says, Hillary Clinton has called for all cash payments to go away because of climate change. And I'm like, that's enough for me this morning. I put my phone down and I thought, whether that's true or not, that is just like the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. Is it true?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she called.
She did say that. It's not a meme.
That is true. No. That is true.
What's wrong with these people, man?
Yeah, well, you got to wonder who's listening to this woman anymore.
All credibility gone, huh? All credibility gone.
That just shows you how tribal our country has become.
Yeah.
Once you adopt an ideology, your leader doesn't matter. Your leader is impervious. It doesn't matter the stupidity that comes out of their mouths, because I don't know. It's like a cult. It's like you can't do wrong once you're ahead of a cult. Everything you do has got to be right. And look, I'm not just picking on Hillary. Any politician, listen. The deep state relies largely on a facade of authority and integrity, right? Like the FBI, the CIA. When I was growing up, the FBI was an organization to be revered, and so was the CIA. That was the image we have nowadays, largely because of alternative media. If it were completely up to the usual old 4 stations that we had when I was growing up, I'm sure the image would still be maintained, right? Because the media, make no mistake, is part of the deep state.
I used to think that the health politicians in Australia had our best interests in heart, and they were really ultra smart. The smartest people in Australia. The professor that's in charge of the health department, the federal health department. And yeah, he might be a really smart dude academically and really good at his job, but that doesn't mean that he's got actually any common sense between his 2 ears. And it's been found out that the health professionals here in Australia are absolute fucking morons. And it's been found out by people with their mobile phones that the police here in Australia are nothing but a bunch of Stasi fucking thugs. And they're all in the same category as, I believe. I've never been one that's calling for anarchy or uprising or some craziness like that. What I'm calling for is for all of those people that work in government to shut up, worry about roads, rail, airport, schools and hospitals. Just go away and get the hell out of our lives, man. And politics, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, I'm a little bit younger than you, Ed, but when I was a kid, man, politics was not something at the forefront of every single day. But the 24-hour news cycle that is perpetuated by social media and shows like you and me here, that kind of puts it on the top of mind for everybody that's out there, which is a really bad thing. And politicians and politics needs to get out of everyday people's lives because it creates discourse. It's a really bad thing, man. They should just concentrate on what they're there to do, which is serve the people, but they don't.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I think it's very important to be critical and discerning about which sources you're paying attention to.
Absolutely.
If you're going to listen to anything pops up on your YouTube feed and you're not being discerning about it, okay, then you're it's garbage in, garbage out. Your brain is going to be turned into a rat's nest, which is what they want. Okay.
Well, just on that point, when I was watching that little report that you put together, and you're showing the CNN guy, and there's a dude looking at a screen on a wall pretending to actually talk to someone with no webcam pointing back at him. Like, that's how. Did you take me for like I'm an idiot or something? I know there's no webcam there. You're talking to a wall pretending for this interview. Like, it's all pre-recorded. I can see the whole thing is fake. But they're using this language that draws me in. Even now, even though I know it's all fake, I'm being drawn in going, man, imagine if that had been real. Like, so you're 100% right. How do you be discerning, though, when you're looking at these things? How do you not be that instrument of deep state and, be drawn into that fear? That's a hard thing, man.
Well, this is where I think, having a wider, lens when you're taking in news information does help you, filter out, the bad. Over the course of time, you're going to know, what, you're going to get a kind of a sense for, okay, that guy, he makes sense, or he backed it up. I get what he meant. And it might take a little while to, after you look at multiple sources, don't look at just one source. Don't just watch Robbie and I. Look at other sources. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you're worried that too many people are watching too much of this stuff, and it's playing mind games with them. I would kind of I think there's a case maybe for the other side of that too many people are on their social media garbage, watching garbage, and they're not watching anything that's actually going to improve their lives. They're watching some girls on some channel talking about how they're all 10s. And that's that's the idea of people entertainment. My worry is that there's at least one generation out there right now who's not watching any substantive YouTube, or any
anything worth of substance behind it. Yeah, it's discourse. On that note, I was listening yesterday as well. I heard a report. You know how they came out in the US and in their Congress, they said no more TikTok. Yeah, get rid of that CCP garbage. Get it off your phone. Get it off your computer. Get the CCP out of your life. It's spyware. It's a tool that they're using as a data gathering tool to mine all of your data. They're not doing anything bad with it, but they're mining it in anticipation of taking over and making you supplicate. And the irony in all of that is the Democrat Party have paid thousands of dollars to actually pay for TikTok influencers to say why Joe Biden is good. So you're out there saying don't use the platform, but you're using your money to promote your political ideology on the platform to bring young people into it. And I wouldn't be surprised that those young people are so dumbed down in society, they see something like that the mainstream narrative says it forces them into compliance with their message using fear. Donald Trump 2024, we don't want to go through all of that again. And everyone's like, oh, well, who's Donald Trump? What's all that about? They don't know anything about politics. And that's a scary thought, man.
Well, that is the reason why the number one topic at every election cycle for Democrats is abortion, which is, most people...
It affects next to nobody in the scheme of things.
Nobody's looking to take away your right to have an abortion. Nobody is. But the message is that is what they're trying to do. So so that's their fear factor. Yeah. So I just gotta make a check-in here real quick, Rob. Good morning, Washington. Okay. So now my phone is...
It's all right. I'm using Google Chrome. The CIA is listening anyway, and it's been recorded live here on the live stream, and everyone can see what we're saying. We're not inciting violence or political discourse. What we're doing is telling the government to get the hell out of our lives. And those deep state scumbags. Yeah, okay. Did it work?
Well,
no, it's still on my Twitter.
If I don't show up tomorrow,
I know you're being handcuffed and taken away like Peter Navarro.
But and it's good to make jokes about it because satire and humor is a good way of making points. But listen, a lot of people, it's important to be discerning about the news that you take in. And I think the best way to do that is to look at multiple sources of information. Don't just rely on one. Then maybe in aggregate, you can kind of come up with a sense of what the truth actually is. But that is an important starting point, is that just because a guy is a director of this or chairman of that, doesn't mean he has your best. Doesn't mean he has your best interest at heart.
Like Professor No Neck, No Name, No Brain from the Australian government saying, these things are really safe. Everything's going to be okay. You'll be okay. I've checked for you. I've done everything. You'll be right. What the hell, man? You're nothing but a liar. You're a liar, and you're an absolute fool. And those people in that report you showed, man, are liars and fools. And when you think about it, imagine staking your reputation, going on stage in front of hundreds, potentially thousands of people, and knowing that the video that's been recorded there will go to millions of people, and you're staking your reputation on something you haven't fully vetted or checked. And there's no way that you could fully vet or check any of that information. And that guy on stage saying, it was 80 to 90% of it was correct. I spoke to people that were near him that said that. Yeah, I spoke to heaps of people that were near that guy as well, but they had no idea what they were talking about either. They just happened to be in proximity to that person. And it's the Ronald Reagan thing, man. Do you trust the Soviets? Well, I trust, but I verify. And if there's no way for you to get complete and total verification to 100% of your satisfaction, then just don't do it. Now, I want to close out by getting your thought on this bit here, Ed, is the most important thing with this with this deep state stuff that happens is the narrative that's perpetuated is always based on fear. They're trying to scare you into compliance one way or another. And the way that I personally handle that, and the way that I handled everything that happened in the last couple of years, is by remaining completely detached from it. So it's impossible for any human being to see a deep state narrative, to look at that and to go, I can't not be drawn into it, because language is such a powerful thing. And they use language and they use imagery to stoke emotion, and it draws me all the way in. I'm drawn into this thing. And I start to feel these emotions. I start to feel a little bit of trepidation, a bit of anticipation, a bit of fear that maybe they know what they're talking about. Maybe that is right. But my tool, and the unspoken truth about all of that, my tool is to remain completely and totally detached. And when you hear that term, critical thinking, for some reason, everyone has lost the art of critical thinking. And if you just go to ChatGPT or Google and ask it, what is, define critical thinking? The way that you define it is simply by taking away your emotions from what you're seeing there in front of you. And you're taking away your emotions, you're taking away your bias, and you're taking away any interest that you have in the outcome associated with that. But the problem is that they use such powerful language, the deep state that is, to make you scared. And it's nearly impossible to fight the emotion of fear. So remaining detached by using critical thinking and stepping back from yourself by saying, okay, I feel a little bit of fear about that. I feel a bit of trepidation. Like, what's that? I don't get scared about anything. And this idiot news reporter is making me feel like anticipation and fear. Hang on, let me just step outside of that. Just nothing. I'm completely safe. Nothing's happening here in front of my computer or in front of my phone. I'm safe. So now detach yourself from the emotion and then ask yourself, who has the most to gain? Why would they tell you that? What's the point of them telling you that? Why is that even a news report? And, I'll sum up by saying this. Years ago, when my daughter was in nippers, do you know what nippers is?
Diapers?
No, nippers is a sport. So it's like beach sport. So when kids go to like athletics training, so they run around a track, they throw a javelin, they throw a shot put and all that. So we have the same thing, but on the beach. They're like beach skills, right? They learn to swim, they learn to run, they have races, they have all these things. So it's called nippers on the beach. So here at South Cronulla, where I live, it's one of the biggest nippers in Sydney. I think it's actually like maybe even the biggest. Yeah, and it's sponsored by Channel 7. So Channel 7 is one of the mainstream media outlets here in Australia. So we have 7, 10, 9, ABC and SBS, and there's a couple of others, and there's all the digital TV that goes with it. And we were at a presentation, and At the present, so Channel 7's the biggest sponsor there, right? So they give a lot of money to the surf club, and their logo is on everything, on the clothes, on the boats, it's everywhere, right? And the reason for that is the dude that is responsible for the sponsorship lives in the local area, and I'm pretty sure his kids go to that Nippers. Anyway, this is a couple of years ago. So we went to the local high school to do the Nippers presentation, and the person that gets up to deliver the presentation is the news director from Channel 7. So let me just do that again in air quotes so people understand what I'm doing. The news director from Channel 7. And I elbowed my missus and I said, "See this fuckwit?" And she goes, "Oh, shh," like that. I elbowed her again. I said, "See this fuckwit?" And she goes, "What? What?" And I said, "This is the dickhead who tells all of Australia what to think." That one person right there. Because he's the person responsible in the boardroom every morning at looking at all the stories going, "Yep, let's put that one on, get rid of that, that's garbage, put that one on, that's garbage, get rid of that, put that on, and make sure you emphasize this one." And he was one man. One man was responsible for what you see and what you feel. And that one man, he was just a man. He was just a dude up on stage, cared about his kids like everybody else in the room. You know, he had the ability to deliver hundreds of thousands of dollars of sponsorship, giving back to the community. He was awesome. He's an awesome dude. But he's the guy responsible for the mainstream narrative of what happened in the last couple of years. He's the one responsible for perpetuating the deep state there in the US, here in Australia, and influencing the way that almost every single person in Australia thinks. And the reality is, if you can be detached from people like that, he's just a person. He's just a man. If he was fired from that job tomorrow, he'd be no better than me or you. He just happens to be in a position of power. So you must remain detached from people like that. And you must remind yourself that the people behind all of these stories are just people like you and me. And they're no more important than you and me. They're no better than you and me. They're not smarter than you and me. And that's been proven. Just because you've got academic credentials and you've got an ability to do a good job doesn't mean you're smart. Most of the smartest people in Australia in the last couple of years in government have proven to be the stupidest people. It's like we're governed by a box of rocks. That's how smart they are, because nothing is dumber than a box of rocks. And the Australian Parliament is full of politicians that are stupider than a box of rocks. And the police that enforce the laws that these politicians tell us to go and do are so stupid that they comply with everything that they do as well. It's like a crazy society that we live in, man. It's an upside down world. So I just want to remind the audience, it's a bit of a rant, I know, but remind the audience that the people that are controlling the narrative are just people. And if you take them out of those positions, they're no better than you or me. They don't mean anything, and neither does the narrative.
Yeah, well, before you said the words, I was thinking about the two words too: critical thinking. Critical thinking has not been taught in our schools for decades, right? It just hasn't. They are indoctrination camps now, and now we.
Hey, we're moving into North Korean territory.
That's right. Re-education centers. Who told you that the nuclear family was important? No. We have to re-educate you. So critical thinking is a lost art, right? These days, and so we have to hope that we get at least some of that back. And so we have to do whatever we can through shows like this to help introduce the idea of critical thinking to people. And regarding the deep state, people having messages of fear in order to scare people to gain control. Yeah, that's true. But notice something though, that every time they bring up fear, they always have a solution all teed up for you, ready to go. So I think when they're in the back rooms and when they're at their Illuminati parties,
Imagine the dickheads in that room.
I'm sure everyone turning your cell phone before you go in the room. No cameras. Everyone put on your robes.
There's a big pentagram on there, and a goat skull. They're worshiping Satan or some shit like that.
But I'm sure what they think of first is, all right, so what do we want to accomplish? Okay, so that's what we want to get accomplished. But okay, so that's the solution. But now we got to create a problem that will be the solution for.
Exactly, they're just reverse engineering everything, and we're on the receiving end of it. That's 100% right. Well done, Ed. That's a great conversation. It's a show all by itself. That's for sure. But let's shift gears and talk about some stuff that's in the news, shall we, in the war in Ukraine.
Yeah,
as I mentioned at the top. Yeah, as I mentioned at the top of the show, there's been a barrage of hypersonic missiles that have been intercepted by the Ukrainians. So these are the interceptions from yesterday. This is what actually happened. So across the top line there, they're all the Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. So 6 of them were intercepted. There was one that was shot down about a week ago or so, and no one really knew what was going on. But it's now come out. The Ukrainians have said that we've shot 6 of these down. In the middle, they're the Caliber cruise missiles that have been shot down. On the left there, the little aeroplane-looking ones, they're all on drones. The little triangle-shaped ones, they're the Iranian drones, and the missiles on the bottom are the Iskander missiles that are there. So if you don't know, this is what a Kinzhal missile is. So if you look at the outline, the graphic on the top line there, the Kinzhal missile there on the bottom of the MiG-31 Foxhound there, that's actually what it is. It's a big, big missile. The aircraft is capable of going at 3 times the speed of sound. It goes all the way up to altitude, up at 50, 60,000 feet, and it fires that missile up into the atmosphere, and it goes, kind of drops down and fires all the way up, and then it comes down in a trajectory down at planet Earth like that. So a hypersonic missile, something that is hypersonic, goes more than 5 times the speed of sound. That's the idea, anything above that. But it can go between 5 and 10 times the speed of sound. No one really knows how fast these Kinzhal missiles go, other than the Russians, of course. And it's suggested that they go somewhere in the vicinity of about 10 times the speed of sound. And we know that from some of the testing that's been put out, fired from eastern Russia over near Vladivostok, and it gets to the other side of the country in no time at all. And you can calculate how fast it's going by that distance and based on the open source intelligence that's out there. So it's said that these things can't be intercepted because they don't go outside of the atmosphere. So a ballistic missile, so think of like a Terminator movie or like a World War III movie you've seen where they launch an ICBM and it launches from the ground and it goes outside the Earth's atmosphere, and then the camera pans and you see the missiles crossing each other in flight. So that's a ballistic trajectory, right? It gets out of the atmosphere into space, and they're essentially just rockets. Yeah, and the rocket has, as the rocket separates, as it goes through its path, on the end of the rocket, there's several warheads. So a Satan II missile, a Russian one, has like up to 15 different warheads on it. So you could wipe out all of the military installations in the United States with probably about 2 or 3 Satan II missiles, because the number of warheads there, they go to different targets and where it is, etc. So the American ICBM missiles only have 1 warhead on them. So not very many, and they haven't been updated, but they're said to be updated pretty soon, and a whole lot of stuff's going to actually happen, which seems crazy in this day and age. So the hypersonic missiles don't go outside of the atmosphere. They skim across the top of the atmosphere, which makes them really hard to see on radar. And the Chinese, so let me join some dots here for you on why this actually matters. So the Chinese look at American aircraft carriers, and they don't call them carriers. Do you know what they call them, Ed? They call them targets. So it's a funny thing, right? So the Chinese don't have a blue water navy or submarine capability to go and sink these aircraft carriers. So what they developed was they actually rationalized their army. When Xi Jinping came to power, he got rid of about half of the army. And everyone's like, oh, what job do I have now? And they said, well, with no more army, we're going to turn you into the missile force. We're going to be the biggest missile force in the world. And in that process of doing that, they created hypersonic missiles. And they have, you would have seen on Chinese military parades before, they have these funny scooped shaped things, and they have what they call a hypersonic glide vehicle. And that hypersonic glide vehicle skims across the top of the atmosphere, and it can maneuver as it's coming in. So it doesn't go outside of the atmosphere, so we can't see it when it's in the top of the atmosphere. Our space-based infrared has a really hard time seeing it, and the computers and the AI have a hard time tracking its trajectory. And then when the ship's radar can actually see it, trying to intercept something like that is very difficult because it's such a small target, maneuvering at 10 or 11 or 15 times the speed of sound, and then it's maneuvering as well, it's going to hit the aircraft carrier, right? That's the idea of it. So these Kinzhal missiles, to our knowledge, don't have a maneuvering capability, and they're certainly not glide vehicles that come in. We've got the Patriot system that is actually been given to the Ukrainians. So this is the Patriot system here. So there's two types of Patriot systems. There's a Pack 2 and a Pack 3. So Pack 3 is the most advanced system, and it has 16 canisters in it. So on the left-hand side of that launcher there, you can see there's 4 and 4, and then there's 4 and 2. So it's missing 2 canisters in there. And the Pack 3 missile system is a direct kinetic energy weapon where you hit a missile with a missile. That's the idea of it. The Pack 2 missile system is designed to fire, the Patriot missile comes and the incoming missile is coming at you and it explodes and the fragmentation actually hits it. And the fragmentation is designed to actually destroy the incoming threat and the incoming missile. But that we don't know if that is actually working. So what we don't know as well is what missile system the Ukrainians have been given. Have they been given Pack 2s or Pack 3s? I can't find any photos of them. The Ukrainians have been very good at actually hiding what it is that they've got. What I can find is on the open source intelligence from the Ukrainians, they did training on Pack 2 in Germany. And the Germans were the ones that handed over the actual Patriot systems. So have they got Pack 2s or Pack 3s? Everything works the same. The systems are the same. The engagement envelope is a bit bigger with the Pack 3 because they're more updated. The point of me going through all of this technical mumbo-jumbo is to say that hypersonic missiles were thought to be invincible and we couldn't shoot them down. And we thought that this was actually not. We know that we can shoot a ballistic missile down. That's been proven many times. The Patriot system's been tested more than 3,000 times, and it's had more than, according to the Raytheon website, more than 1,400 shots. So it's been fired a lot of times, and it's got a really, really bad reputation. Terrible reputation. The Patriot system didn't work in Saudi Arabia when in Yemen the Iranian drones were getting through and they were hitting the oil refineries. And the Patriot systems were there, the world's best missile defense systems were there to protect these high-value targets and assets, and they were being destroyed by $20,000 Iranian remote-controlled drones. It's kind of funny, really. But that's asymmetric warfare, where they're using something that Patriot's not designed to kill a $20,000 drone. It's designed to shoot down an ICBM, and it's designed to shoot down a cruise missile, a caliber cruise missile type thing. And we've seen now that that's actually been true, and that's actually worked. And when we look at these interceptions here and what's gone on in the last couple of days and how that's happened, so it's estimated that that strike that the Russians did had cost the Russians more than $128 million to do that. And everything that they threw at the Ukrainians was destroyed. So those Kinzhal missiles, the hypersonic capability of those things was designed to give the Russians an asymmetric defense or asymmetric capability against our defense systems. And that's now been proven on the battlefield to not be true. It was proven once last week, and now it's been proven 6 times in one evening that it actually is not true. Your hypersonic missile systems don't mean shit. And your hypersonic missile system, so long as we've got a Patriot battery in play, are going to get shot down. It's as simple as that. You don't have an asymmetric advantage against us. If we don't have Patriot systems protecting the assets that you're going after, sure, you're gonna get through, and there's nothing else that could probably shoot it down. But there's other systems out there designed to shoot down ballistic missiles. And so the Russian Air Force has been completely limp and impotent in this conflict. And their advantage so far has been their hypersonic weapon systems. And now that advantage has been taken away. They've failed completely to gain air superiority inside of Ukraine, and they've had that asymmetric advantage by being able to launch those Kinzhal missiles from over the horizon and striking targets, and they have been effective up until now. Yesterday as well, it was said that one of those strikes got through and actually collected one of the Patriot systems. So the Russians came out and said, no, we were targeting those systems, and one of them was actually hit. And inside a Patriot battery, there's up to four trucks with 16 missile systems each. So we don't know if there's 16 missiles on each truck or there's only 4 missiles on each truck. So this is a key difference, and the reason that I'm going down that path and talking about the different varieties of them, because if there's 16 Pack 3 missiles on each truck, it gives us more capability to defend against it. And when you think about it, how quickly can we reload those 16 missiles on that one truck? Well, I don't know. That's that's the problem, is that professionals talk about logistics and amateurs talk about tactics. And if we can't reload those things, all the Russians need to do is just keep firing barrages of missiles at us until they bleed us dry of air defenses, and eventually that stuff will get through. And that's otherwise known as a war of attrition. So how does that play differently? Now we know Patriot can shoot down Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. Does that mean that we can go up against DF-13 hypersonics from the Chinese? Well, we've got, on the Aegis warships, we've got SM-3, SM-2 and SM-6 capability. SM-6 able to shoot down an ICBM, SM-3 able to shoot down these missiles coming at you in the terminal phase, albeit in a very difficult scenario. Can you hit a bullet with a bullet? Yes, it's been done many, many times before. Has it been done in a high-intensity conflict before? No, not until yesterday. This is one of the biggest things that's ever happened in modern warfare. And the reason it's such a big thing is because it completely takes away the Russians' advantage against NATO and the Ukrainians. All of their advantage is now gone because their missile systems have essentially been rendered impotent and they're rendered useless. It doesn't matter how many of these things you fire at us because we know that we've got more missile defenses, more PAC-3, PAC-2 rockets that we can fire at you than you've got Kinzhals that you can fire at us. So it's a big thing from a strategic perspective. And what it comes down to is not the weapon systems that are being used, but the capabilities that are available to both sides. And the Russians have the hypersonic capability that allows them to go after high-value targets deep underground. It was said that they used a Kinzhal missile to destroy a NATO command center and killed 300 people. We don't know for sure because the Ukrainians don't talk about that. They've used we're pretty sure that they used Kinzhal missiles last week when they went after that Ukrainian ammo depot, potentially contained all of the depleted uranium rounds for the Challenger tanks and a series of other weapons storage caches as well. So if you take away the asymmetric advantage that they have with Kinzhal and hypersonics and we can wipe that out with Patriot, where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us at a strategic, not a tactical, but a strategic advantage because their air force is no longer really relevant to us. Because the only thing that's really relevant in their air force, let's face it, from a strategic perspective, is if they can fire 20 Kinzhal missiles at once and try and take out Zelensky in Kyiv. And even if they could do that, there's a succession plan in place and there's already contingency plans to actually handle something like that, so it's not really an issue at all. For mine, it's a really interesting time as an air defense operator when I look at all of what's happening, and I just know the capabilities of phased array radars. I know the capabilities of the Spire 1 radar that's on American warships. I know how these systems work and how they come together and the integration of how these things come together. And it is absolutely game-changing. And to all the critics out there that have said that the Patriot system is complete garbage, it won't work, it's going to get plinked off the battlefield on the first day of the war, it just proves that they don't know what they're talking about. And again, it goes to the heart of that deep state conversation that we were just having. How can you possibly know that? Unless you were the operator of that missile system up against those Kinzhal missiles, you couldn't possibly know whether or not the Patriot system works. Unless you were the operator, meaning you were the console operator, you were sitting there with your mouse and your keyboard, hooking the track and getting ready for the boss to tell you to press the fire button, unless you were sitting there doing that, there's no possible way that you could be a critic of the Patriot system. And the people that are critics of this look at what happened in Saudi Arabia against the Yemenis, against the Iranian drones, and go, oh, these things don't work, they're no good, it's not going to happen, they're going to be useless, so what, we put one battery of Patriot missiles inside of Kyiv, so what? The reality is the people in charge know better than the commentators that are out there. And it's to your point, Ed, you've got to be very, very careful of who you listen to. There's a guy out there, his name's Scott Ritter. So Scott Ritter has been a huge opposition force to this war, saying that we're on the wrong side of it and the Russians are going to win and the Russians are going to destroy us all. But time and time again, every prediction that Scott Ritter makes is wrong. He said the Patriot system won't work, it's garbage, it won't help. He said that the tanks that we get from NATO, the Ukrainians get from NATO, are not going to help. But he's wrong. He's wrong time and time again. And it's easy to be a pundit 5,000 miles away from the front line, and he's never driven a Leopard 2 A6 tank. How would he know? He's never driven an Abrams tank. How would he know? He's never sat at the console of a Patriot PAC-3 system and doesn't understand its capabilities and limitations. How does he know? It's one thing to get your news from people who are pundits and experts. Remember, I was talking to you the other day, Ed, about how people claimed that they're experts. So I've been reading a book about how to live a better life and how to unlock your genius and whatnot. And right towards the end of the book, it talks about predicting the future. And what they talk about is that people that go on TV, on mainstream TV as commentators, have consistent, there's been many studies, they come out and make predictions, but 100% of the time they're wrong. And the reason that they come out and make these claims is because they're the expert and they have to put their reputation on the line. They come out and make a claim, but they make the claim as if it's the gospel and God's written word, as if they're the God of air defense or the God of armor and they know exactly what they're talking about. But the reality is no one knows. Only the operators of those machines actually know, and only the people that created those machines actually know. It's like saying, how does the Google algorithm work? I don't know. All I know is that it does these things when I do that. It's an if-then scenario. The only people that know how the Google algorithm works are the people that work at Google, the engineers. No one can tell you, no SEO expert can tell you how the algorithm works. Only Google engineers can tell you how it works. So be careful what you listen to, folks, about all of these pundits saying that we're going to lose the war or the Russians are going to win the war or this is good or this is bad. Trust, but verify. You have to trust, but verify. You have to trust something. You have to look at something. But the reality is that most people don't really know what they're talking about because most people have never operated the machines or the equipment that they're commenting on, particularly the generals that are on TV. The idea of a general officer, the general officer is somebody who's a general. They move away. I remember reading David Petraeus' book, and he's an infantry guy, and then all of a sudden he's not an infantry guy anymore, he's a general, which means now he's a logistics guy, now he's this guy, he's that guy. He has to wear so many different hats as a general officer because they're covering everything there like that. So just be careful who you listen to, because the people that really know are the operators of these machines and the operators of this material. And, even if the Russians did target that Patriot system in Kyiv and it was destroyed, so what? One battery of 16 missiles was destroyed, but you fired something like 30 missiles at us and we shot them all down and not a single one got through, or maybe one got through and clipped that one there. So it's hard to know what's really going on in what you would call the fog of war. What I do know is that the asymmetric advantage that the Russians think that they had with the Kinzhal missiles is gone. That is gone, and that is one of the biggest strategic developments of this conflict so far. And the Chinese will be looking very closely at that, because the Chinese don't understand our capability with SM-6 or SM-3, and certainly not even with SM-2. So those systems with the Spy 1 radar are far more capable than what the Patriot system is. Far more capable. So the Chinese think that the aircraft carrier battle groups are just targets. Yeah, the carrier might be a target, and the carrier can stand off, but what we can do is get our pickets in really, really close. Our guided missile destroyers can come in really close to you, and it doesn't matter, you keep us 500 miles away, it doesn't matter, I'll pop a TLAM at you at 2,000 miles away. So what? Who cares? I've got the asymmetric advantage already anyway, and I can strike you, I can reach out and touch you anywhere on planet Earth within the next 90 minutes. So it just doesn't matter what hypersonic missile system that you actually have or you don't have. It's actually rendered irrelevant by our defenses. And in my view, that's a win. That's a win for us, because that's what keeps security and that's what will keep the Chinese at bay. I'm certain that the Chinese would be looking at the last 24, 48 hours going, whoa, maybe we went down the wrong path. Maybe that wasn't such a good idea. All right, that's what I've got for you on that. What do you think, Ed?
Brilliant analysis, Robbie. Excellent, boy, world class. I should book you somewhere important. That
you can't get me on TV because I'll go, I don't know, man. I'm not the operator. Stuff if I know. They'll never ask me back.
Okay. Well, while you were talking, I did get an alert that Chief Council Operator Sergeant
from
Orloff,
CNN.
yeah, Sergeant Orloff is going to appear on Military Monthly magazine. So maybe we'll get the full story from him. maybe he'll have pictures for us. And he can tell us, he can give us a firsthand description, because like I said, it's kind of an historic event, because up until yesterday, we were told that these Kinzhal missiles were untouchable, and now that's been debunked. That is a big one, because even I know that if you have a weapon system that is supposedly, indestructible, you cannot counter it in any way, and that myth has been busted. Okay, that's a big deal. Like you said, if Xi Jinping was relying on these hypersonics now in his upcoming conflagration, now he's thinking, oh, damn, maybe I don't have the advantage I thought I had. So these military analysts in war rooms all around the world are rewriting their textbooks about.
Well, and to my point, the thing that kind of annoys me about all of this is all of the so-called experts that are out there. I find myself, like Grandpa Simpson screaming at the clouds sometimes when I look at, I see these people and I'm like, even though I don't know the answers to the question and what they're communicating about it, I'm just kind of generalizing here as well. They don't know either, but they go out there on television and they're in the mainstream. They're on CNN, they're on ABC, NBC, they're here in Australia as well, and they're perpetuating something where the poor old journalist on the receiving end is going, oh, well, that's pretty interesting, like,
Well, when you think about it, these ex-generals are being paid pretty good money to be the special expert guests on these shows. And they come on and they know that they have other expert generals on their list too. So they got to make sure they say something substantial. Otherwise, they might not invite them back. Otherwise, that's a fat check. So I can see where these guys might stick their necks out and say things that are kind of provocative or unsubstantiated, just for the sake of feeling like he is giving some value added.
They've got to say something, don't they? Right?
Yeah.
To your point, they're getting paid, so they have to make a stand about something. Otherwise, it's too wishy-washy. It's ambiguity. I'm not sure.
I would love to hear one guy say, I don't know.
There's been a couple of other developments that have happened as well overnight. So let me just close the loop on this hypersonic thing for a second. There's really two ways that the Chinese and the Russians could have gone. You could have gone with the stealth way, or you could have gone with the hypersonic way. And they went with hypersonics. And the Chinese, to some degree, have a little bit of a stealth capability, although the Indians have debunked all of their stealth capability in their part of the world, saying that, hey, these J-20s have been over here and we can see them on the radar. They're not very stealthy at all. Maybe the Chinese radars don't work as well as our phased array ones. Anyway, the hypersonic ability that they're using with these missiles seems like it would be an asymmetric advantage, but the American side and the European side have chosen stealth over hypersonics. The hypersonic programs that we have they don't work. We haven't developed the technology. We don't have the technology to actually do it. And in the last budget, there's been a huge amount of money allocated to catch up to the Chinese and the Russians in hypersonics. But we've gone with stealth. Long-range anti-ship missiles, LRASM, is a stealth technology where it has the ability to be dropped from a cargo plane, has the ability to be dropped at scale from aircraft carrier-borne, airborne platforms, that is, so F-18 Super Hornet, JSF as well. Australia is getting that capability, and that long-range anti-ship mission is based on stealth. So these things cannot be detected. They can't be detected by space-based assets, and they can't be seen by land-based radars or seaborne radars. And they don't travel very fast. They're not going at hypersonic speeds, that's for sure. But they're going a really long way, really long way.
I'll tell you what, though. The Chinese have something that we will never have in our military.
I can always feel the punchline to a joke coming. You're good at the setups.
They got really big balloons.
They do. And maybe they can drop their anti-ship missiles from those balloons. That could be a problem for us. That's funny. The other development that happened overnight was, Zelensky was shopping for weapons around Europe in his jumper or his jumpers. I
was going to say, I had a shopping joke. Yeah, go ahead.
Zelensky was shopping around, and the French were talking about, hey, we're going to give you some more tanks, we're going to give you that. But the French, I saw a report earlier this morning that the French have come out and said that training on your fighter jets can begin now. So there's been some reports that have been kind of under the radar, excuse the pun, a little bit in the last couple of months, that in the UAE have a whole bunch of Mirage 2000s that they were going to give back to France because they'd bought something else. I can't remember if they bought Super Hornet or JSF. I don't know. I can't remember. But they were handing back those Mirages. And as soon as the Mirages were handed back, the French were like, well, yeah, you can have them. What are we going to do with them? They're straight off the flight line there in the UAE. They're flyable. So it's just a matter of bringing everybody up to speed with the logistics. So would a Mirage 2000 going up against the Russian Air Force make a difference? Well, it depends on what version of the Mirage 2000. What we do know as well is the French have come out and said, Macron came out and said, if we're not going to fight the Russians there in Ukraine, we're going to end up fighting them here. So let's help them as much as we can. And the Ukrainians have always said that, right? They've said, we're not asking you to fight, we'll do it for you, just give us the weapons. So it makes sense. And the French have said that they're going to give them their Scalp missiles as well. So Scalp is another name for Storm Shadow. So that was a conglomeration, it's a European thing that came together. They built that weapon system. And, you know, to my earlier point where you're going one of two things, it's VHS or beta. It's Apple or it's Google. You've got stealth or hypersonics, and Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles are stealth missiles and proven in combat and proven to get through. And they said that they were going to give them the long-range versions of them as well, which again, that is something. Now you're giving the Ukrainians the capability to take out command and control, to take out ammunition resupply and fuel well behind the front line, to kill their logistics completely, to bleed the front line dry. No more logistics, bye-bye. Now we can go on assault and get rid of we can just probe them until they're out of ammo. Now we know they're out of ammo. Now we can just roll them up. So it might play out very, very simply in that sense. I think we're going to see a large attack on Crimea soon. We're going to see the Kerch Bridge dropped again. And there is no good situation. No. You know, that's the best of a bad situation, really.
I've got one solution for you, Robbie.
Best I can do.
Best I can do.
Is nuclear war.
There you go.
That's where we're going to end up, dude.
There was also news over the weekend that Egypt apparently decided to send just a buttload of their armaments to Russia. And who knew? But apparently Egypt has a lot of armaments. I don't know why, but apparently they've got like an ungodly amount of armaments.
They were sending them to Russia? I didn't say that. Really?
Yep.
I know that young kid who released all of that classified information on his Discord channel because he wanted to look cool. There was documents there saying the Egyptians were planning to supply to the Russians, but they actually have supplied, have they?
Yep.
Look at you breaking the news on the unspoken truth.
Yeah, military stuff. You know that's you got to start watching more sources, Robbie. I know you keep listening to the same two channels for all your. you gotta widen your aperture a little bit.
No, I go to bed thinking about Kinzhal missiles and Patriot systems and why Scott Ritter grinds my gears so badly and he's full of shit. On that topic, he's pretty smart dude. He's an all right dude.
Yeah, everybody needs a hobby, so
they do.
You got yours.
Good one.
So, boy, yeah, Crimea. Listen, I still think Zelensky is for sale, and I still believe this is all going to end with Zelensky sitting in a bespeckled sweatshirt, signing a BRICS agreement, and the people in Washington, man, I just love to be a fly in that wall. Watching
their heads are going to explode, man.
Yeah. I think
stranger things have happened, that's for sure. So,
and JP Morgan's going to be rolling up with their British truck,
I saw JP Morgan had to pay $1 billion fine about those bank accounts and stuff.
They do that all the time.
It's in the bottom of someone's pocket.
That's just the cost of doing business. They pass it on. They charge an extra dime on everyone's checking account.
Let's wrap it up for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. So those people that have joined us on the live, sorry, I've been a bit remiss in the comments there. There's a couple in there, so thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for sharing a bit of unspoken truth with us here. Don't forget to come on over to Spotify and get a copy of the podcast over there if you can't grab us here live on YouTube every day. You can certainly hear us a little bit later in the day, a couple of hours later after the show's live. It'll be live in Spotify. It pulls through into Apple Podcasts as well, and as a result of that, it goes to all of the other podcasting apps. So wherever you're listening to your podcast, you'll be able to get some unspoken truth in your ears. So make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and tune in every day as well. We're over on Telegram too, so come on over to Telegram. I'm getting a little bit more active over there, sharing a bit more stuff about the war, highlighting the hypocrisy and showing you the unspoken truth over there. I really encourage you to join the Telegram channel because I can show you stuff over there that's a bit R-rated that I cannot show over here on this platform here on YouTube. And Rumble, of course, is our backup in case something happens to us here on YouTube for whatever reason. We're not really talking about controversial topics. We're talking about things that are in the mainstream. We'd love to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got a question, put it in the comments down below. Put the word question in front of it. Write your question there, and if somebody sees that, go ahead and answer that, and we'll answer those as well. Don't be a troll. If you've got some feedback, please put the feedback in there as well. If you'd love us to talk about a particular topic, or you didn't like that particular topic, or you want us to maneuver into something different or new, let us know that as well, and Ed will do his best to comply with that, and I'm just going to talk about the war in the military.
No,
the extent of my knowledge doesn't go past that. I got heaps of other stuff.
We're gonna get you started on love and emotions and yoga. No, we're gonna completely. We're gonna have you doing the downward dog before the end of the month. So
I was going to get you to talk about some Hollywood celebrities for me.
Hey, I'm up. What do you want? What do you want? I love the bass these guys. Sure. What do you got? We'll take someone down a peg. Yeah, what do you
you'll take what you get. That's what it is.
Bring it on. Those snobs. Yeah, we'll humble them. Yeah, sure. You're gonna be
all right, folks.
I'm pretty easy.
All right, folks. Don't forget to like the video, and don't forget to subscribe as well. And we'll see you tomorrow at the same time. It's bye for now. See you, Ed.
See you, Robbie.